welcome into another episode of Suds with Luds. Today is another special one. He's an old-timer. He's been in this NHL life, I would think his entire life, in one way or another. 15 years in the NHL as a goaltender. He's won a Stanley Cup. He is now the executive director / president. I don't know why there's two titles there. Maybe he can't fire himself or nobody else can fire him. But he takes care of the NHL alumni, those guys that cross over to the other side when they're done, works with all the families and the ex-players and things like that. Glen Healey. Heels, I appreciate you so much for coming on. First off, I want to say you do an incredible job since you've taken over. How long has it been, Heels? Was it like 2016, 17 you took over in this role?
Yeah. I think what we saw was there were a number of players. We all transitioned, every one of us. We all retired. Not everyone transitions the right way. And there were players that had fallen through the cracks, that had passed away without getting medicals done. There were players that were on hard times. And, I believed we needed better. And Wayne Gretzky believed we deserved better. And so the dance started with phone call to my house. And of course, oh, hold on, Wayne, here he is. Now, immediately I'm thinking, Wayne who? I don't know Wayne.
Wait. Did you call Gretz or did Gretz call you?
He called to get this thing sorted.
Wow.
And, then I'm thinking I'm getting punked, right? Then it's like, well, it can't be him. It's got to be someone else pretending. Anyways, we met and the conversation started this way. Baby Jesus, you have to be in the manger come Christmas morning. So you got to be all in. And if you're all in, then we'll fix this. And that's how the journey started. And so we started then to build programs and a library of services for all the players and spouses and kids to take advantage of to make tomorrow better than today for guys that are missing that hope and feel helpless. And that's how the journey started. But make no bones about it. This thing works because the players buy in. The players want to make a difference for their brethren, for their teammates, for players they competed against. They deserve and believe that they deserve better. And that's what we've created. But it started with a ripple in the water, and now it's kind of become a tsunami.
Well, again, I know you've put a ton of work into it, and I know you've probably got an army of people that work with you. But and speaking of the alumni family, I had Scott Burnside on here a couple weeks ago, and just prior to Scott coming on, one of our family in Peter McNabb had passed away a few days earlier. And I, in the same, a week ago, Hall of Fame weekend, I believe it was, Borje Salming came in, and I'm sure that you've had a relationship with Borje, and you probably got an opportunity to see him when he came in. He was suffering with ALS. Can you talk a little bit about Borje? And did you have a lot of or some time to spend with him over the past few years?
Well, Borje, when we used to have this skate in Toronto, it was the Jack Ridgway super agent skate. And he wasn't an agent. He didn't even represent players, but that's what we called it. And it was the best skate anywhere. I mean, every player was an NHL player. A lot of them are Hall of Famers, and it was better than training camp because, Luds, you go to training camp, you step on the ice, you look at a couple of players and you go, you don't have a chance of making this team.
Exactly.
You can't play, right? So this was a great skate. And we would train for an entire month. We would ride the bike and we'd run hills and we would do all the lift weights and just get ready for the start of the season. And in comes Borje Salming one day before camp, going through his equipment like, oh, I hope my skates are here. Oh, they are. Good. That's great. Last time he had played was from the last game the season before. Bar none, the best player on the ice. Without even trying, the best player. And we all sit there and think to ourselves, we're doing something wrong here. This guy has got this figured out. But Borje was a complete talent and a wonderful person. And we made him, Lidstrom, and Sundin. We always pick a man of the year. It's been everyone from Beliveau to Lafleur to hockey's royalty. This year it will be Dave Keon. But we made the three Kroners, the three Swedes, the man of the year all at the same time. And the reverence that Lidstrom and Sundin showed towards Salming, that he had paved the way and he was a trailblazer in every way. It was just so powerful to watch, just the respect they had. And we went to Sweden and we talked to our alumni because we've got 1,300 European alumni. And I can remember walking down the street in Sweden And it was Sundin, and it was Salming, and it was Lidstrom, and I was kind of behind them. You know, I was kind of like a Ringo Starr from the Beatles, like really not part of the Beatles, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the heads turning in the street. It was like royalty walking down a street in Stockholm. And he was a giver in every way. And the disease, terrible, very aggressive, and sad to watch a quick demise. But at the end, he died with his family all around him. And not that he won because he's not with us, but the disease didn't win either. Well, and so, but very, very sad in every way. And one of our pioneers of the game. And we've lost too many of our damn pioneers.
Yeah. And that's why you're doing what you do, is to try to make those times as better as you possibly can as they get towards the end. And I don't know if I read it or I heard it, but weren't the Leafs trying to get Borey to come in, or the Hall of Fame trying to get him at a different time, whether it was a couple weeks earlier, a month earlier, and he couldn't make it. And it was like a last minute thing that he actually did come in this year?
No, we knew he was coming in for about 3 weeks.
Okay.
So it was planned. We just had to make sure that from a health standpoint, that it's a long trip, right? It's not down the Long Island Railway to get to the Candiac Park or wherever we used to practice.
Oh my God, was that a
long way? And so his health had to be up to speed, up to standard, and it was. And so the trip was pre-planned. Maple Leafs, they planned it all. I'll give Larry Tannenbaum and Brendan Shanahan full credit for this one. They let us know he was coming in. We just made sure the family was comfortable, that everything was taken care of for them. And after he passed away, I had a lovely chat with his wife, Pia, and she's a wonderful person and just really appreciates not just the Leafs, but the entire hockey family wrapping their arms around Borja. We bombarded him in the last month with messages from everybody. There were, at our end, at the alumni, probably over 150, 170 messages from all the stars of our game, you know, just telling Borja just what they thought of him from this side of the pond. And so he was getting a lot of love from a lot of people, particularly in his last couple weeks, couple months, and proud to do it. But I'd give everything back just to have him on the planet with us for one more shift.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was really something that he made it, and everybody got an opportunity to see him, especially in that, you know, one of the biggest days in the NHL when it comes to the Hall of Fame and everything else, and being in Toronto and all that. So sad that he's gone, but a hell of a career and a hell of a life I'm sure he had, and a lot of people have looked up to him. So let's talk a little bit about this Glen Healey dude. You know, I noticed. Do you realize, Healy? One of my kids went to Western Michigan, and apparently some kid from Pickering, Ontario, went to Western Michigan. And I'd like to know, how did you end up or get to Western?
Well, you know, I was playing junior in Pickering. For those that don't know, Pickering is world renowned for having an 8-reactor nuclear power plant. So
now that explains a lot right now, right off the top.
A lot. Now you can see why. Yeah. So, you know, my father fought in World War II and came over after the war from Scotland. And really, his goal was to have one Healy educated ever. Just give me one. Get one, go to a university somewhere. And so my goal was always to get that education. And I had a bit of a chance to play junior with the Peterborough Petes, a gentleman, a really friendly, great coach, just so kind and giving, by the name of Mike Keenan. Came down to try to recruit me. And, you know, at the end of that meeting, he basically told me I'd never play in the NHL and what a mistake I was making. And you should play junior and you're just throwing your career away. And at 16, those are hard words. I was almost in tears sitting there thinking, maybe I have made a mistake, but I stuck to my guns and wanted to get an education. I really believed that if you learned, you could earn. And so ended up with a double major at Western. And so to me, it helped my NHL career because I didn't feel like I had to make the NHL. If I didn't make it, okay, well, it's just, you know, a kid from Pickering didn't make it just like every other kid from Pickering by a nuclear reactor. And so having that in my back pocket helped to take some of the pressure off, to give me a better chance to develop. By no means at 18 was I ready to, you know, I was just a chunky little fat kid from Pickering, and I hadn't worked out.
So everything's gone full circle then, you're saying?
Yeah, I'm back to the same,
okay.
I guess.
All right.
something's never changed. But that's how I ended up there, and pretty much played every game for 4 years and had the time of my life. And those are probably 4 of the best years I've had playing hockey, with some of the best friends that I continue to this day to interact with. But no bones about it. It wasn't daycare, Western Michigan, but it was the next thing just above it. So it wasn't exactly the Harvard of the West. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you must have been a student when you went there, right? I mean, because I look at everything that you've done. I mean, at the end of the day, you've been in the hockey game your entire life for the most part. I mean, in one way or another. And I wanted to ask you in a little while here. I thought there was a time where you were, trying to get into management a little bit also. But anyway, from the broadcasting to everything, you must have studied. I mean, now you're doing what you do, and are you part lawyer, or what did you go to school for?
No, I ended up with accounting and marketing as my 2 majors, double major. But I initially, Ludsy, was going to be a computer science major. And your daughter would know this, but there's a computer hall called Rood Hall. Okay. And this is back when the computers were the size of like your dining room table, right? And so computer science major, here we go.
Okay.
Wait in line. You have to wait to get on the computer. I wait about 45 minutes. I get on the computer. I sit in front of it for another 20. I couldn't figure out how to turn it on. Then finally the guy beside me goes, there's a switch in the back. You just have to click that. Okay. So guess what? I was no longer a computer science major. I dropped every class.
Uh-huh.
I became a business major. Here we go.
You're a quick learner.
Let's try this one on. So, but no, from a legal standpoint, I mean, working at the Players Association and understanding, the legal side of things, the litigious side of things, IPs, trademarks, you do learn a lot. You have to. And, there was always a differentiation between the business side and the labor side, and, working on CBAs and player rights and like all that stuff. You couldn't help but learn. And so for me, I sucked it up like a sponge, learned as much as I could from some really, really smart people, and took that, put it in my back pocket. And, hopefully it's led to a pretty good journey for me post hockey, because the first journey was a pretty good one. And we all know you're not going to do much better than play hockey.
Yeah.
It's the best job you could ever have.
Well, and you come out of Western, you're not drafted, and you end up going to LA. You're not a drafted player, right? You get to LA. And I wonder, what was your first experience getting to LA? Because we kind of went into that southern market when we came from Minnesota to here. I'm just wondering if it was anything. I mean, we got here and was like, where have we landed? And, you're in football country, and it ended up being the best thing for the majority of us. But how was it when you first got to LA?
Well, there's some similarities. Okay. So you probably practiced at the rink in Culver City.
Oh yeah.
And there was almost like a speed bump at center ice. You could kind of you're going up and down. You're like, oh boy, you got a little bit of a speed wobble. And maybe it was from the pops the night before to give you the wobble. I don't know, but it
straightened us out. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
But it had a lot of similarities to Candiac Park in Long Island in the sense there was no lines on the ice, like no blue line, no dots, so goalie, angles, it's important to know, okay, that's where the dot is. That's where the hash marks are. There's where right. And I would kind of look at the other end and, okay, the net goes here. Yeah, that looks good. And if they scored on me stick side, oh shit, no, I just put the net over here. There we go. I fixed that now. And so I think back to that. Then I look at the very first game that I played in Dallas. It was a neutral site game. And we played in your old Reunion Arena. And I remember going out for a warm-up, and I stuck my head between the glass and said, hey, guys, we need the nets for warm-up. What, you need nets for warm-up? Yes, we need nets for warm-up.
Yeah, they were looking for the goalposts to put out there maybe.
Yeah, so anyways, there was a lot of similarities, right? You broke into a new market, and Dallas became just a fevered frenzy for hockey fans. You won championships. LA, when I first got there, yellow pants, yellow helmet, yellow sweaters, dancing around the league, getting our ass kicked by everybody. And then we ended up getting this one guy. I can't remember his name.
Escape you? What is
Gretzky. That's it. Yes. Now I got it.
Yeah.
We immediately became a powerhouse. We changed our sweater. Our Meet the Kings night, we had everybody who's from Hollywood at Meet the Kings. We had it at the Brown Derby in Beverly Hills. And I remember going to the big shindig, and I had Paul Gay, Paul Fenton, and Lyle Fair, the four of us in my car, a black Ford Escort with no air conditioning. And we drove up, and the paparazzi were all there taking pictures. And then about 4 seconds into taking pictures, they stopped and they kind of looked at us and were like, who are those guys? We're on the team. That's why you're here. So at the end of the day, the whole movement changed for hockey south. You had your San Jose come in, you had your Florida, you had your Tampa Bay. It just became the place to be in every way. But it wasn't that way at the start. We're in our yellow sweaters and yellow helmets. But we could beat the heck out of everybody. We had everyone from Tiger Williams to Larry Playford, you name it.
I know.
We could beat everybody up.
I remember. And in the biggest obstacle, it seemed like, was the outside the arena and the Forum Club. And so those were attractions. How long were you there before Gretz came?
1 year.
Just one. Oh, so you were part of the whole parade then.
Yeah, and then and it was great because he went from Grant Fuhr to me. Good luck with that one.
Oh,
yeah.
What the hell did I get ourselves into?
I got this Healy guy.
Now, what about was that Bruce McNall? Was Bruce McNall there then? He was the owner.
Bruce, he owned the team, and I loved him as an owner. He, again, I can recall one night leaving the game, and I'm getting in my black Ford Escort, and he's got this Bentley, and he threw his keys at me and said, "Here you go, Hills, take my car." I'm not taking that thing. There's no chance, especially the area I lived in. But yeah, the times changed, and Bruce was great, and in every way. I mean, hey, at the end of the day, his lease didn't make it so that he could financially keep the team the way he wanted to keep the team, and that's the business side of it. But from an ownership standpoint, he was really good to the players.
Well, so talk about your move from LA. I think it was it LA when you left there? Didn't you have an interesting 24, 36 hours or something like that?
Well, that was when I left the Islanders.
But that was so. When did you go to the island then? How many years were you in LA?
Again, Gretz looked at me and said, "That's no Grant Fuhr. I need a good goalie." And that's when Kelly Rudy came on board.
Okay,
and
well, he was pretty
good. They kept me around just in case there was an injury because we were a playoff bound team. But I was the player to be named later with regards to a transaction, and then went to the Isle. And you were part of that group there with Al Arbor. We had a bunch of young players. I think at one point we had 3 rookie defensemen and Kasparidis, Malakoff, and Vasky. Young developing team. We weren't the dynasty of the Islanders, and it was a learning curve and a learning process. And I do recall one story. We played a game in Detroit. We got smoked. I didn't play.
Okay, well, let's get that out there right away.
Yeah, and I think we outshot them like 40-12, but they beat us like 8-0. And the joke was, this smart guy at the back of the bus said, "Yep, you couldn't send me to the minors, so you brought the minors here." And that guy was you. So I'm just letting you know. But we were developing, and it was a young
I don't recall saying that though. Are you sure?
Yeah, well, I think the other message was you could put your one of your kids in the driveway and take slap shots from 10 feet, and they would stop more than what our goalie did. So the good times, but a total rebuild. And Al Arbor, I mean, I loved him like a second father, and really helped to develop my career. But we had a great last year. We beat Pittsburgh in the semifinals. They were a dynasty, but the love affair didn't last with me and the Islanders.
What I remember about Al was, and this was when I was there that short time, is Al would be on the bench, but it was Darcy Regier and Lauren Henning. They seemed to run all the meetings. Al would stand in the back of the room before, for the team meetings in the morning or pregame things. And then on the bench, Al would kind of stand back, and the other 2 guys would do all the work. And I just remember there was one time I was sitting on the bench, and he leaned, there was a goal scored, and he leaned over and he kind of whispered in my ear. He goes, "What the hell happened there?" That was all he said. And I just kind of turned around and looked at him. I'm like, I didn't know what to say. I mean, you got a Hall of Famer or legend. And I didn't know if he was serious or joking. And there was another time we were doing the morning skate. In the morning we were stretching, and he just skated past me, and he goes, "Ludwig, you're playing in the wrong era. You should have played in the 60s. And so I wasn't sure how to take that either. So I basically was saying, Dude, are you mad that I'm here? You got stuck with me, or I'm really slow, or all of the above? Apparently.
Well, he definitely was old school. And when things were not going well, what I liked about Ali is put his arm around you and make you have a better tomorrow than you were feeling that day. But when things were going well and you had that swagger and that panache, he would kick you so far up the ass you'd be flossing your teeth with his shoelace. Like he didn't. If you thought you were all that in a bag of chips, Al was not about to let you become what you thought you were going to become. But he helped so many players along the way. And, that whole transition, it was hard to watch all his great players go. And then all the new young guys come in. And, he didn't have the team Scotty Bowman had. He didn't have the Montreal Canadiens where they're all in the Hall of Fame. He didn't have the Detroit Red Wings. He didn't have the Pittsburgh Penguins. Al had his team. It was great for a long time, and then the rebuild was on. But I really respected him. He was the best coach I ever had.
Yeah, one of the greats. So, take us through that day that you end up becoming a New York Ranger.
So we end up going to Ireland after that great run in Long Island, and we're having clearly a good time. There's 8 of us, and so to misbehave, you can easily find 6 that want to misbehave with you, maybe 8, and we're on the west coast of Ireland. We have no telephone. I don't have a cell phone. No one had cell phones back in '93, unless you had one of those big ones with the big thing on the top.
Yeah.
I didn't have one of those. And so, it was again all about this expansion draft. My contract was up. Year-end party, Pat Flatley, who was the captain, decided to write on a napkin and give it to the owners what my contract demands were. And the owner crumpled it up and threw it at me. So I knew at that point that the honeymoon's over. They're not going to re-sign me. So again, I'm in Ireland and I get picked up by the Anaheim Ducks. They call me. Welcome to the team. I don't have a phone. I never picked up. So next day, Tampa's allowed to pick one player. They call me. Congratulations. You're on the Lightning. I didn't pick up. I don't have a phone. So again, what you can imagine what they're thinking about.
How are you finding all this stuff out?
We found after the fact, the teams kind of gathered around and basically thought I was a complete asshole because I wasn't picking up any calls. They were like, maybe he's mad that we picked him up. He's that mad. Yeah. And then the Rangers made a trade. They had lost Van Beesbrook, so they thought, you know what, we'll just go grab the guy who played for the Islanders, who was pretty good against us and had a good playoff run. And the next thing you know, I was a New York Ranger. The ironic thing was the last game that I played as an Islander in New York, we won in overtime. It knocked the Rangers out of the playoffs. Done. They're finished. And a disappointing year for the Rangers. And I was one of the stars, and I decided to go on the ice with no gloves on and tell the fans what I thought of them.
Oh, yeah.
And they were throwing beer at me and you name it. And a month or so later, I'm a New York Ranger.
What was your reception like when you were introduced?
Horrible. They thought I was Benedict Arnold. The Islanders thought I was a rat because I was with the Rangers, and the Rangers thought I was a rat because I played with the Islanders, because those teams never made a trade ever. And it took a while for there to be a little bit of a love affair. Maybe a Stanley Cup helps, but at the start, it was those two teams dislike each other. Like no one, you can talk Boston, Montreal, you can talk Toronto, Montreal, but Islanders, Rangers, you are not a fan of both teams. It's one or the other. It's the Hatfield and the McCoys all the way through. Yeah. So, but again, good team in New York, Stanley Cup, and ending, 3 generations of misery in a great city.
It is something. I was very fortunate to win a cup in Montreal and Dallas, and there really is nothing like winning a Stanley Cup in an original 6 team, is there?
No, yeah, and New York, literally grandfathers with fathers with kids hadn't seen a championship. You watched the grandfather be wearing an Eddie Giacomin sweater, and then the father be wearing a John Davidson sweater, and then the kid would be wearing I'm not going to say Glen Healey. Let's say Mike Richter, because he was pretty good. Yeah. So, you'd see these 3 generations and just, 54 years of and good teams. They had great teams in New York. you look at some of the clubs, and I guess the Islanders, to get by them for the years that they were great was near impossible. But they had some really good players and just couldn't push it across the line. And it took a bunch of misfits from Edmonton and from the Isle and from Chicago, and a coach who was a raving lunatic at times. We had mutinies, we had parties, we had parades, we had it all. We were like a rock band, but at the end of the day, it took us right to the very last face-off of the last game in Game 7 to beat a good Vancouver team, just to lift the 35 pounds over your head. As you know, it is not an easy trophy to win.
Yeah, but it's all worth it at the end. And then it's funny, you don't play in any really small markets, do you? And so you end your career in Toronto, right? That was your last pit stop?
Yeah, that was that was my team as a kid. When I was 5, I remember 3 things. I remember going to kindergarten and crying. Then I remember the first time I skated, which I couldn't, and staying up to watch the Leafs win the Cup in '67. And I thought, well, they just win it every year. I'll stay up again next year. We'll see it again and again. Okay, I can collect my CPP, my pension now. That's how long ago it's been since they won. But coming to Toronto, that was my team. So I had some opportunities. One was in Montreal and the other was in Toronto. And I was actually in Montreal getting my physical done and almost agreeing to contractual terms when the Leafs called and matched their offer. And as I sat in front of Ray-Jean Newell and Dave King and the coaching staff, and we were thinking about a press conference, and I called my agent to talk about it, he basically said 2 words: get out. So try that one on for size, Ludsy. Like, there's no military crawl. It's just, I was like Ralph Crandon from who wrote Swanee River. So out I went. For the younger people, you can Google that, see what that is. But it was a chance to go to Toronto and to try to do what we did in New York. If we could replicate winning, again, they're at 4 generations. But if we could do that, again, that would be what a cherry on the top of a career. We came close, semifinals 3 of the years, but just we couldn't get over the top. And one of the years, Dallas won the Cup. We lost to Buffalo. You guys took them down. And another year, we had a chance with Carolina, and they won the Cup. And so that didn't happen for us there. Another year when Ty Domi and Niedermayer had that interaction that didn't go well for us, New Jersey won the Cup. So, I mean, we set teams up for Cups, but we were a good enough team to win, but we just couldn't get past that 3rd round.
Well, by being in Toronto, did that in a way lead to, because you did broadcasting for a long time, and as everybody, or most people, if they don't know, it's hard enough to be a broadcaster, analyst, whether you're doing TV, radio, or whatever, but to be able to be in a market where, Toronto, Montreal, Chicago, all the big cities, and they love their teams. How did that transition start for you when you got into the broadcasting? I mean, again, to do it on TSN and some of the other areas that you were, Sportsnet, I'm assuming was one of them, but Hockey Night in Canada, I mean, that's around the world for the most part.
Yeah, I like most players, my career ended with a pink slip. So I was 40, and
you're fired.
Well, it was June 30th. Everyone knows that day. And in comes a courier on a Saturday. I'm thinking, oh, I wonder what this is. I know what this is. So bought out, word hits the wire, and Hockey Night calls me that day and says, would you like to do it? I said, well, I'll try it, but if I'm not good at it, I'm not going to make a fool of myself and lose some street cred based on the fact I'm doing this. So the very first game that I did was with the great Don Whitman, and recall being up in the booth in Edmonton. We had yet to get between the benches. That became a standard location later on. But I was up in the booth, and at some point the game starts, and I'm pretty excited. This is the first time I've ever been in the booth, and Hockey Night in Canada, coast to coast to coast. This is great. And Don pushes his mute button and says, hey, stupid, put your headset on. Now, I thought Canada could just hear me just by talking.
Yeah.
So in goes the headset, and then the first whistle, up come the lines. Messier, Curry. So I started reading them. I mean, I don't know what to do. And okay, it basically is up and gone within a half second. So I said, well, there you go. Unless you're a speed reader, that was a complete waste of time. So stand by, because the next whistle, we're going to waste more of your time.
Uh-huh.
We're going to show the other team. So the first game didn't go well with the executive director and producer. They were, you can't say that. And I'm like, well, I did say that. And so, but you know what? We had great people that I worked with, you know, getting to do games with Bob Cole and some of the best producers in all of hockey and some of the best tape people. And, you know, again, you're doing the last game of the year, which is the Stanley Cup. Being the first group to ever go between the benches, that became a staple. That is now a broadcast location. We were the first to do it. We tried it during the lockout, and it worked.
Were you the first guy to jump down in there between the benches?
Now, Pierre Maguire will tell you that they were. I'm here to tell you, wrong. We were the first. That's a fact.
Oh, so you're the guy responsible for allowing Pierre Maguire to jump down there between. That's you.
Is the show over? Please?
Oh, it's over. Yeah. No, it's not over. We got a ways to go. So you're the guy. So, well, what was that like? I mean, because I've never, you know, I was able to do it, you know, from up on the platform up there. But what was it like between? Because man, it's fast down there.
It's fast, but you sense fear. You sense panic. You know when a hit's a hit. Like you can feel it. A shot. Like, you know, there are times when, yeah, come on, how did go in and stop that? Meanwhile, at ice level, I'm looking, well, I mean, first it had a stewardess on it. So it's going about 1,000 miles an hour. You can't, I mean, there's 8 guys in front of the net, right? All you guys that love to block shots, get out of the way. And so at the end of the day, you got the fan a little bit closer to the game. And we tried different things. Like I remember the one game we tried a radar gun, you know, and I would stand there and hold the gun and, okay, that shot was 92 miles an hour. I can remember doing a Pittsburgh game and Sidney Crosby stopped and he looked at me and he said, "What the hell is that?" Like I'm standing holding a radar gun. Radar gun? I don't know. So we tried a bunch of different things. And I really believe from the fan standpoint, the game does look easy from up top, and but boy, it's fast. Things happen quick, and you're better able to bring the fan closer to the game. It worked, and we were the first to bring it on. And you know, I can tell you there was a lot of nights. It was very dangerous in between the benches. You hands up and like cover up. Here they come. Nearly got hit by a number of pucks. Which you're going to laugh and go, you couldn't get in the way of them when you played. Now, all of a sudden you are, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And hockey night was the place to be for many years. But it became, as you know, the travel was hard. You were gone for 10 straight weeks. Yeah. That's playoffs. Every night you got a game. Every single night you're traveling every day. And you miss a lot with your kids. You miss a lot with your family. And so it became difficult, especially as you got older. Traveling was not fun.
I wondered if the prep was tough for you, because it was probably one of the things that I never really appreciated, the amount of work. You know, I just had Ralph Strangis on a couple of days ago, and that guys like Ralphie and Razor and all the broadcasters have to go through, and all the little nuggets that you need when there's a break, and all the info. And the hardest thing for me is that you sit there for years, and I was able to do the desk in the studio, intermissions and things like that for a long time. That's easy because we're coming to, you know, you got your 10 minutes or whatever in between periods. You know what you're going to talk about. You know who you're going to talk about. Now when you're calling a game, and all of a sudden when you actually think you know all the players in the NHL, you're like, oh shit, who the hell's number 22 again? I got to talk to, you know, you'll know the 87s and the, you know, the 68s, you know all the 99s, and then come the other guys. And so did you find that the prep for you was a big challenge, coming from being a player, then all of a sudden the amount of time and hours you had to put into it?
Well, I found what we wanted to do with Hockey Night was tell a story. Every game has a story. Every player has a story. And can you get that story to the fan? The challenge with doing the broadcast whistle to whistle is you've got to make that story your point, whether it be tactical, humorous, aggressive, whatever it may be, but you've got to do it in about 15 seconds because they're going to drop the puck. They're not waiting for Glenn to finish his story. Right. Finish your fable, Glenn, and we'll drop the puck. No, like make it happen. Do it quick. Make your point. Get in and out. And that cadence, that ability to be able to make that point. But look, I was never a guy who was good stick in the lane, good matchup. Like, you think Sidney Crosby gives a rat's ass who he's on the ice with? You know, everyone talks matchup. You think Gretzky ever, oh my gosh, I'm on the ice with Joel Otto. Oh no, maybe I'll only get 5,000 points. Like, they didn't care. Mark Messier didn't care. When Mark wanted on the ice, he just went on. There was no coaching Mark. There was no coaching Wayne. And so a lot of what was tactical, we just let go. We were more, tell me the story about this kid from Pickering by a nuclear reactor who's getting a chance. And I think we were best at that. And the storytelling part was the best. And again, every game, the how and why. Why did my team lose?
Yep.
How did my team lose?
Yep.
Tell me that story. And sometimes it is failure by your own team. But as you know, there are so many talented players that are game breakers and not just clock killers, not the ones that go out for 40 seconds and just don't make a mistake, but really can make a difference in the game. And those are the players that we told the story more about than anybody. But again, it wasn't hard in the sense I had the best producer in Shirley Najak in all of the world working games with me. So if I didn't see it, he was seeing it. And we're sitting doing games, Ludsy, with 26 cameras in the Stanley Cup final. If you're picking your nose,
there's no place to hide there, is there?
Finding it. 26 cameras is a lot of eyes on to make sure we don't miss a thing. Now there are, networks that do games with 5 cameras, 4 cameras, and that's a bigger challenge. But with us, the talent we had in that truck, honestly, it'd be like the backup singer to Celine Dion. Yeah. Who cares? She's good.
Yeah. Well,
I'm in the E Street Band with Bruce Springsteen playing the bagpipes. Who cares?
Well, okay. You led me down that road. You're a piper. I was going to get to this at the end, but since you brought up the bagpipes, you are this little guy that blows in the Scottish, and you wear the hats, and I think you wear the skirt or whatever. That's all. How did that begin?
Well, a Scottish family, and so you've got to play an instrument, sing the piano, and pipes were something that was in the house. And so, anyways, not quite me, but and so when I was younger, like it wasn't cool. Like, you're gonna go to university with your bagpipes. Like, really, who's your roommate? He ain't gonna like it. Most of the time in the house here, so I got the 2-door rule. I can only play if there's 2 doors between me and the family, because they are loud. But when I started doing it, it became a passion. And for me, it has led to me getting all over the world to play in some of the best places. Yes, we've done Paul McCartney's concerts on 5 occasions, where Mulligan Tire is the song he likes to play second last to Let It Be, which is always his last song. And we got a chance to meet him and be on stage. The big joke was that's the only time Glenn got to play at the Arcana Center with Paul McCartney, because Cujo wouldn't let him play. But we've also done Vimy Ridge, which was the birth of the nation for Canada. That was an incredible experience. The D-Day beaches. We did Carnegie Hall in New York City for 9/11. We were the last Canadian band into Ground Zero the first year of 9/11. Roy Thompson Hall, Toronto Symphony Orchestra. It's just, to me, it's a passion. I traded in my hockey team for a bunch of pipers and drummers and guitar players and drum kits and fiddles. And the only difference is you're allowed to drink before your gig. You weren't allowed to do that in the NHL. So
there's a perk right there.
It's a ton of fun and a very talented world-class band. And so I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And we've done everything we piped for the Queen, we piped for presidents, we've been everywhere. And probably the best time is in Newfoundland at the George Street Festival. We opened for April Wine 3 concerts in a row. And I don't know if you've ever been to Newfoundland, but man, those people.
I can't say I've had the pleasure.
Now, I'd give it just one tip for everybody who's listening. When you go on a whale watching tour, don't let the pipers play their pipes. You'll never see a whale, which is what happened to us. Like, how dumb was the guy bringing his pipes to go watch whales? We didn't get to see it.
Well, let's get into what you're doing now, the important work. And executive director / president, NHL Alumni. What can you take us through? Not just your daily stuff, but I mean, because it's completely done a 180 since you've taken over, and all the things that entail in your job and your daily work with players, families, kids. Tell us what Glen Healey goes through in the last 4 or 5 years, and where you've come from when you came on board as the captain of that ship.
Well, there's a couple of things. When the job is very simple, and our staff, they know exactly what they're supposed to do, and that is make tomorrow better than today for every player and their families. And that our mission statement is honor the past, because we are the ones that pave the roads for these young kids today to play and to drive on those roads in the NHL. When we played, Luds, we were about 350 players. Now there's 1,177 that played last year. I get 130 players that retire every year. And for a lot of them, they retire. The world is a pretty good place. They transition well. For some, that is not the case. And so the first thing we had to do as an alumni, one, recognize what we were. Are we a bunch of guys with bellies that want to play hockey? Are we a friendscaping group? We just like to get together and drink beers and tell stories, and half of them aren't true. Or are we legitimate and the brand is bigger than than clearly the years before we were making it? And I really believe the brand is huge. When you look at the Believos and you look at the Gretzkys and the Bobby Orrs and Mark Messiers and the Sundins and the Mike Madden, go down the list. That is I would put that group up against any of the current players at any time. And so we needed to create a business base that would allow me to provide the services to the players. So that business base did not mean I'm putting my hand out and begging the league for money or begging the Players Association for money. It was the exact opposite. We're going to stand on our own 2 feet with a big brand and make that work, and then provide the library services that we need for players. And that could be everything from players that, if we look at all of ours as a triangle, top of the triangle, if a player gets in trouble, that's acute intervention. That's rehab. That's the things where you read about a player in the paper. We were good at that. We put a player in rehab, no problem. Okay, to cost you some money. That's not what we should have been about. We should have been about all the support that goes underneath the players to prevent that player from getting to the top of the triangle, or that spouse, or the kid of a player. And so we've inverted the triangle. And so the base of the triangle, the support group, the mental wellness that we provide, the social workers that work with our group. We have 3 that work with players every single day. That's the group, the transition programs. Those are the things to make a difference, so that I don't have to call and get help from the Doc Shaws. Everybody knows he's part of that transition EAF group. And that's where we've totally flipped the worm. Let's take care of guys, invert the triangle, and stop getting players to the top of that triangle. And so there is not a phone call that happens now where if my phone rings, I have to say, I'm sorry, I've got no help for you. We have help for everything that you could ever imagine. And I don't do it by myself. It's the players that make the difference. And I have an incredibly talented staff that just, all they want to do is help. And that's what I've heard from every player. It hasn't been, you calling me again? It's, how can I do more? I want to do more. And that's a real testament to the players that you and I played with and against, and what they care about with regards to their families, other players' families, and where they want to make a difference.
Can you talk a little bit about what you've done when you talk about the players and the guys that paved the roads? Because before you came on board, I don't think that they were probably as taken care of as they are now. And so what were some of those challenges and that you needed to correct?
Well, you've got your pension for the guys that played in the 60s and 70s is despicable. Thank you, Alan Eagleson. Like, why didn't you just go away 30 years ago? And when you got a guy, who's played 20 years in the NHL and his pension is 7,000 Canadian per year, that's not even a trip to Disney. Like, how are you going to live off that? When you've got players that need medication for cancer, there's no way as a pensioner you can afford it. So the pensions are terrible. So we had to create something called supplemental gifting, where we basically doubled and tripled players' pensions. So that gives them at least a fighting chance to provide some medication. But the ability, look, if you need your hip done because the game beats you up, in this country, in Canada, we have healthcare, but we don't. We don't have healthcare here. You got to wait 16 months to go get your hip replaced. And you know what happens? You can't sleep. So, well, sleeping pill's going to help. And now it's painful. So the pain medication will help. And then you get your hip done 16 months later, and I'm driving you to rehab. Why don't we just get your hip done?
Yeah.
So, we've done things there where we've taken care of players right away where they can go in and get their medical stuff taken care of. Mental wellness. There was a player who was homeless. It's a well-documented story in Canada. He'd won a couple Stanley Cups. It took me 13 months to get him assessed by what we call CAM-H up here in Canada. Look, I could have assessed him in 4 seconds. I didn't go to medical school in Western Michigan, but he needed help. Yeah. And now we have that help immediately out of Ottawa, out of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Dr. Nash, Dr. Raj, they help me. I can get a player help in 13 seconds. That makes a big difference. And then, this year, for the first time ever, and maybe it was because Brian Marchman passed away right before the draft, or maybe it was Dale Howardchuk passed away without getting a medical with cancer. But we had over 300 players go in when training camp opened. The doctors are there and they're doing blood work and EKGs. Players, alumni could go in, whether you played for Dallas or not, you could go in and get your medical taken care of so we could see what's under the hood. So we're slowly chipping away at some of these medical issues that, again, make tomorrow better than today. Because as you know, Ludsy, if you don't have money, that's all you think about. I don't have money, can't pay my bills.
Yep.
If you don't have your health, that's all you think about. And I'm sure Dale Howardchuk, the last couple months of his life, and I'm sure Boria too, the last 6 months, that's all he thought about was where did it go? I never thought at 60 that this would be my 70 or 71, but that's the reality. But we have the ability to make a difference for players, and that's what we're going to do.
We think that our game, our passion here is going to continue on forever and it's never going to end. And then that day it does. Is there anything you would tell the current players? I mean, you're not a counselor or anything like that, but is there any advice that you would give them? That they're heading at the end of that road, it's coming.
I would say there's a couple of things. Investment vehicles are not things you drive. Okay?
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Separate your church from state. Your agent might be a good negotiator, but he's not the best guy at investing your money, and he certainly isn't the best accountant. So church and state, separate the two. It is a short career and a long life. And so the career, which is great, make sure you set yourself up for what is going to be the next journey, which should be as great as the first journey. And then if I was to give them any advice for the next CBA negotiations, negotiate what other sports have, which is healthcare. Because you might be 27 and feeling pretty darn good about yourself. Right. But I'm telling you, you're going to wake up one day at 57 and go, man, this game beat me up.
Yep.
Because it does beat you up. And you might need a shoulder done and a hip done, or a shoulder, hip, and a knee, or you might have some functional integration issues because we will never have an out of bounds. I didn't use the word concussion. Let's call it functional integration. You may have those issues because we're, again, never taken down the board so you can run out of bounds. Okay, don't hit me now. No, you're getting pasted. And so we've got all those issues. And while they're playing and they have that voice, set yourself up for that second journey, which should be as great as the first journey.
Awesome. One last thing, since we're talking about the current players a little bit, you were part of the competition committee, which if I read it correctly, you oversee rules and I don't know what rules and equipment. And I find it ironic that a goaltender is part of a competition committee when it comes to equipment because you're the biggest cheaters on the planet.
More than me was you. Okay. Your shin pads were illegal and my goalie pads were illegal. So
okay.
That's why you put me on the competition committee.
Okay.
I didn't have to cheat.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, that's like, listen, if somebody like bank robbers, if you want to catch a bank robber, hire a bank robber. I mean, they'll tell you exactly what's happening, how to do it. So I guess that's a good thing. So, when we talk about rules and things right now, the current game, there's a couple things that are going on. One is in your wheelhouse, obviously. the reviews for offsides and things like that, they seem to last. I mean, I can drink a 6-pack by the time, well, shit, I could drink a 6-pack in 30 seconds, but I can drink a 6-pack by the time that they come up with some of these solutions. The other thing is the goalie nets coming off all the time right now. What would you do, or how would you handle both of those if you were part of, in that room of trying to find solutions?
Well, the hard part is once the referees go to Toronto, which is where the war room is, and if you've not been in it, it is pretty impressive. They've got more camera angles than you could ever imagine for games. And so once the referees, though, take it upstairs, so to speak, it's out of their hands. Someone else is going to handle it now, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say less reviews are better.
Better for the game.
Yeah, why? Let's play the game.
So what about the goalies that are cheating now and getting whistles? Or is that a result of just goalies being bigger, stronger, the style that they're using? Is it all about the pegs that need to be changed, or how would you handle that?
First, Luds. Let's keep the game safe. And if the nets come off and we lose a goal here or there.
Big deal.
Big deal. So.
Simple.
Yeah. Make it easy. Drink your
right.
60.
Well, Heels, I want to tell you something. This was easy. I personally want to thank you for everything that you've done since you came into the role that you're in, because I've seen a ton of things change in the last few years, and I know that you'll continue that, and I know that a lot of that has to do with, like I said before, your army, your staff that works with you, and you're doing a hell of a job here helping the guys like us that are done, and we have no idea, like walking around with a blindfold on after we're finished for a long time. So, Glen Healey, I appreciate you coming on to the show today and filling some gaps for us here.
Thanks, Ludsy. Anytime, buddy.
All right, Heels. Take her easy, man.